Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Physician's Mind podcast, the show designed to engage the curious mind on the journey of lifelong learning and self improvement in medicine and beyond. I'm Curtis Wilkerson, your host, and today we have Luke Noah on the show. Luke is a second year medical student at the Michigan State University College of Osteopathic Medicine. He has a bachelor's degree in neuroscience and a minor in Spanish, and he's a former D1 cross country runner. Luke is involved in several volunteer organizations within his medical school, and we talked about how he's interested in potentially specializing in anesthesiology, emergency medicine, or internal medicine. If you enjoy this episode, please share on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Enjoy the show. So, Luke, you've got an awesome resume, my man. How you doing?
Doing well, Curtis. How you doing?
Fantastic.
Good.
So, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you? Where are you from? And what do you like to do for fun?
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, my name's Luke. I'm from Michigan, from Grand Rapids, Michigan. I went to MSU for undergrad. Um, and then I'm also going to MSU, College of Osteopathic Medicine for med school right now. Because I'm in med school, I'm kind of boring. I'm just studying a lot. Outside of school, I like being outside, like being with friends, playing sports, um, yeah, watching sports, I like cooking, drinking coffee, uh, yeah, stuff like that for sure.
Now, what piqued your interest in a medical career?
Yeah. Um, I feel like a number of things, but probably one strong factor that kind of molded my perspective was growing up. I grew up in a household of a doctor, and so just like the medical, uh, there was always like talk about medicine in my household growing up, and I didn't exactly know, fully 100% what it meant to be a doctor, but just that was in the environment growing up. Um, and I saw it was my dad, he's a family doc, and I saw the way that he was very um like devoted to his patients, and he cared a lot about his practice and about um you know like taking care of his patients and making sure that they were healthy, or making it through really difficult times. um and I just saw that level of connection he had to like his job, and like it was like more than a job for him. um and I was like, oh, that could be an interesting job choice for me going forward. And also it didn't like completely scare me away either, because I have a few other siblings, and none of them wanted anything to do with medicine. But I just think it piqued my interest a little bit. And then I think undergrad is really the time to pursue other activities to really like flush out why you want to go into medicine. And I was able to do some volunteering, some working, and I guess we can talk about those later if you want. But those experiences kind of all accumulated together really, I think, painted the picture of like why I wanted to become a physician. Um and yeah, kind of led me here today.
Awesome. And you minored in Spanish. So are you fluent in Spanish?
I did minor. I'm not fluent in it. I would say I haven't sustained the language enough between taking the classes in undergrad and now to yeah, to maintain that competence and that confidence in the language, and I just haven't been immersed in it enough. But definitely, like, coming out of undergrad, I was pretty confident in it. And that's a skill that I would like to spend more time in, because I think like being bilingual or having, a comfort in multiple languages is something that helps a ton, especially, I mean, really in anything that you do, but especially in medicine when you're interfacing with um, so many different people from so many different backgrounds.
Yeah, most definitely. So when you
Yeah.
started college, were you already from the get-go like I want to go to medical school? Were you neuroscience initially? Did you change your major at all?
Yeah, I was pretty set that I was like pre-med and I knew like that was the track I wanted to be on. Um, and so like I entered like the science specific college at Michigan State. It was called Lyman Briggs. And I don't think initially like I had to declare a major, so I spent a little bit of time just like taking the general science classes. But then I think it was maybe like the spring of my freshman year, I had to declare a major, and neuroscience was one that just seemed really interesting to me. Just because there's so much unknown about the brain, and it seems like the research is so rapidly evolving. And I'd had some family members who had had some neurologic diseases in the past. And so like that was something that was just like present in my family history. Um, and so that's why I pursued a neuroscience major. And yeah, so but for pretty much the entirety of undergrad, I had an idea that I wanted to do medicine and um, stuck with it and it wasn't easy, but we got here.
Yep. That, what is the saying? Nothing worth having comes easy, I think
Yeah.
is how it goes, right? So,
Yeah,
case in
definitely.
point. And you ran cross country, right? 2 years.
Yeah, yeah. I went to MSU because they gave me the opportunity to run cross and track. Yeah, and I did that. I did that for 2 years. I wasn't able to. It didn't turn out exactly how, I envisioned going in. I wasn't able to stay healthy. I, ran into the injury bug pretty consistently through the duration of the time that I did run. But it made for very. I definitely did not have. I feel like the regular college experience, especially experience at like a Big Ten school like Michigan State, um, just by being on athletics team like that for the 2 years, you're kind of in a little bit of a bubble with the folks who you're with every day, and you're very like regimented with the practices and with the competitions and um, but like I think I would do it again in a heartbeat just because I always would have been kicking myself if I wouldn't have at least tried, um, running at that level because like I loved doing it in high school and I had a little bit of talent and like yeah, I always wanted to run at the Big Ten level.
What was your fastest 5K time?
So I was always 5K. I had a kind of hard time at 5K. It was like low 16s was my fastest 5K, which is really isn't that great. I was always more of a track guy. I always liked the fact that on the track you can see the finish.
Mm.
Even if you're not close to the finish line, like you can still see it. And sometimes like during cross, like I could get it in my head, you could be in the woods somewhere and not be able to see the finish line. And that mental side can get to me. But yeah, no, for the 5K it was like low 16s.
Have you ever thought while you were studying or doing something for your medical journey, have you ever kind of compared it to an athletic event? Like, because I know in the past when I have been studying for exams or whatnot, I've thought of it as if it were like an athletic competition. You
Mhm.
know, I don't know if you've ever kind of had that thought of I'm in the library studying or training, I'm in the brain gym training for the race, which is the exam.
Yeah, and for sure. For sure. You're kind of hitting the nail on the head. I think it's a very um pretty accurate analogy, actually. And after I stopped running competitively at MSU, like a few years later, I ran a marathon, and I feel like a marathon is even more of an adept analogy to like this, the slog that you're trying to maintain in med school and beyond, and just maintaining, that level of consistency and doing all the little things and you 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 can't always see the end product and you can't always it's not always a direct visualization of success, but you just kind of got to keep chipping away and trust the process and trust that eventually it'll turn out and just have that level of resilience. Yeah, I think it's a really good analogy actually.
Yeah. And in fact, that's why being an athlete in general in life is so beneficial because it's like especially in the medical world, all the tests you got to take and studying you got to do. It's almost in a way, if you think about it, it's like it's easier to train per se for an exam than it is to train for a marathon because it's like, yeah, you have to endure the training sessions, but one of them
Mhm.
hurts a lot less. You're just sitting
Mhm.
at your desk reading for a while. It's like this is
Right.
easy, if
Right.
you've done a real marathon or something like that. So very
Yeah,
cool way to kind of think about those things.
sure.
Now, you must have been just extremely busy though, those first couple years. I mean, did you have any free
Yeah.
time?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you had a little bit of free time, definitely, but no, very busy. But like I loved it though. And I think, you know, I think it evoked a level of just like consistency. And, you gotta just try focusing on what you're doing in that moment and that time, whether it's um, getting up early for classes or studying, or, you have practice or your competition and then studying later in the nights. Um, and yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of like extra time, but like I said, we were in our little bubble of our teammates, and like those are my best friends too, really. And so we were all doing it together. And luckily, the guys in my class who I ran with, they were all very studious too. So it wasn't like, I was the only one who was, studying my butt off and then also trying to run too. They were all in pretty rigorous programs. So we were doing it together. And actually I think like having the multiple diversions of, the sports and the class, I feel like that actually helped me do better in my classes by having the distraction almost of the running. Because sometimes I feel like if you're just focusing on one thing and nothing else, it can become so all-encompassing that you can get in your head a little bit. But if you diversify yourself a little bit, whether it's, in my case, in that time in undergrad, it was with a lot of the running. Um, that just helped me take the pressure off the classes a little bit and just more like just be free in the classes, and I feel like I did better.
Yeah, yeah, it's almost like a not an escape, but like just an outlet to kind of unleash some of that tension within.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. So was that brought up in your interviews at all, your cross country running when you were interviewing for med school?
Honestly, maybe a handful of times. It wasn't brought up that much. I wrote about it in my personal statement though. And then in the little individual sections, like the activities that you can write. It seems like a while ago that I did the applications. I forgot the format of it, but yeah, like I wrote about it pretty extensively. Um, but yeah, I feel like most of the interviews though were like the multi-mini interview format, so you don't really have that much of a time to like flush out um like more personal stories of you. But the instances where you do have more of a time just to kind of like gab with the person who you're talking with, I was able to bring that up in some way. And I feel like, that helped.
So what
Yeah.
kind of, I mean, you obviously volunteered, you did what you needed to do. Was there anything in particular that you remember that was like, yeah, this is sweet, like this is why I want to go to med school, like let's do it.
Yeah. It was probably the most influential um most influential experience for me was I worked in a hospital for like 3 years between I think 2020 and 2022 or 2023. I forget the exact timeline, but it was about 3 years. And I worked as it was a pretty standard job. It was like a nurse aide. They called it in this hospital, they called it a patient care tech.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like, why it was influential for me mostly was it was during just a pretty intense time just in our country with COVID. And I think, really any hospital system throughout the country was affected in some way or shape or form. And there was such a need for like every type of hospital worker. And so um, I felt uh, I felt a little bit, just of a sense of gratitude that I was able to do a little bit of a small part in helping my community out in in tackling this situation. And I was able to see a ton and, get a lot of confidence in some of my clinical skills and um, just get really comfortable like being in that hospital environment. And I worked inpatient for 2 years and then in an ER for the last year that I was in the hospital. And another thing that I feel like I talked about in my interviews and applications a lot was just like the team aspect of medicine and how that relates like to athletics. And you're able to definitely see that team aspect a lot in the hospital, especially during a pretty stressful time like COVID. And like some of the departments that was on for more of a longer duration of time. Um, you really just got close with the, other techs, other nurses, other, therapists that you would see on a daily basis. And, you could see how, like the level of care would just elevate, so much higher when the team is working so much better. Um, and like that was really cool to be a part of. And I feel like I got a lot more comfortable in really stressful situations by having that job for that time. And like I said, I just saw a lot that I will never forget. Um, and and yeah, like I definitely now in this stage of like didactics and pre-clerkship education in med school, I miss that level of patient interaction and like hands-on work. And I understand there's a ton of importance for this. Like you have to have this the stage of education in med school. But I'm excited to move on to the next stage of med school to kind of be back in that hospital or clinic environment and just be interacting with patients again. Because that's why I wanted to get into medicine in the first place.
Yeah, and I think that's a very common sentiment. I think the last couple students I've been talking to have mentioned something along those lines about how, like, yeah, the first couple years, you go for quite a long time without necessarily feeling a sense of progress or reward or satisfaction, if you will. Because, like you mentioned earlier, it's like you're in the marathon right now and you're cranking out miles 4, 5, 6, but you're like, man, like, when are we going to get to mile 10 where we're start to really amp it up? And mile 10, comparing that to the clinical years, which is arguably one of the more enjoyable parts. And
Mhm.
working in the ERs, I mean, the ER is such a cool place.
Yeah.
It really is. Like you mentioned the camaraderie. I had very similar experience as a scribe in the ER, man. Everyone in the emergency room is just straightforward. They're to the point and they're just like, it's a different culture in there, man.
For sure. For sure it is. Yeah, it's probably a little more like laid back, you go with the flow. You have to adapt to whatever the day brings, but definitely like those type of people gravitate to that environment. And yeah, similar to you, I enjoyed it a lot.
And so now you're going into your second year here. When you
Mhm.
started, was there any sort of like a culture shock to you? Was there anything in particular that you were like, whoa, I gotta adjust the way I study or the way I, you know, go about my days to accommodate for your medical school success?
Yeah. Yeah, there definitely was an adjustment period. I think just getting back into the school mode, getting back into the studying mode, and that uh, took an adjustment definitely because I took 2 years off. I took 2 gap years. Um, so just getting back to the studying and finding, 'cause I mean, I knew it was gonna be hard. I knew I was gonna have to study a lot. Um, but even if you're jumping straight from undergrad to med school without a gap year, there's an adjustment there too with how you study. So um, it did take time to figure out um, the studying system that worked best for me. But I think just what helped me out a lot, like I was so ready to start and like so excited to start, that a little bit of an adjustment was something that, I was definitely fine with. And yeah, it took probably a few months, but we got settled and you just start cruising and um but then, outside of the academics, there's an adjustment and you there's a social adjustment too. You meet so many new people. There's so many different opportunities, so many different clubs and organizations that you have the option to pursue if you want to. And sometimes that can get a little overwhelming. And so I think there's like that fine line um, of like challenging yourself and pushing yourself because I think in this environment you should, but then not burning yourself out too, and like being aware of your own battery, just because like I think that level of burnout, which we're also aware of for physicians, starts in med school. And so just being aware of that early on is important.
Yeah. And you strike me as a guy that burnout won't be much of a problem for. You seem to just be one of those guys that's very laid back and you kind of have an understanding of the balance. You just that is that true? Because that's what it seems like.
Well, I hope, and I think with with my experience with running in undergrad and, finding the importance of sleep and eating right and just like being in a good mental state and how that affected my performance with running. Um, you know, I've sustained those little pearls to today and hopefully in the future, knowing that, the the athletic performance really it translates a lot with with the cognitive and the academic performance too. So like I'm definitely someone like I really prioritize sleep a lot. Like I know there's a lot of diminishing returns, at least for me personally, if I'm up much past 10 or 11 o'clock studying at night. And so I prioritize sleep, I try, eating healthy and still exercising a bit and getting outside. Um, but but yeah, all those it's hard though. It's definitely hard and you have to be intentional about those things. Um, and it seems like, in school for really, everywhere, I bet across the country in every medical school and same with like PA schools too. There's a lot of forces working against you. And you have to find like that system that works for you and just being intentional about it.
Yeah, you do. I agree. I find it hard to ever really study in the evening in general. I've never been a guy that studies in the night. It's always basically it's got to be before noon. Otherwise, it's just going to kind of be 25, 30% capacity studying.
Yeah. And sometimes I feel like there's like a romanticized viewpoint of medical students where it's like, if you're not up till 2, 3 a.m. every night or, half the nights, then like you're a failing medical student. Like, what are you doing? It's like this mentality. But you know, I think that's kind of BS. I don't think that's for everyone. And like I said, you gotta find what works for you and go with that.
Yeah, it's kind of like you just find I don't know. Yeah, like you said, it varies from person to person. And I mean, if somebody is grinding it out all day, I mean, I got a buddy in Arizona who just started medical school and he's like, man, I've been studying like 8 hours a day, bro. I'm like,
Mhm.
well, hopefully you find a way to condense that into something a little more efficient, but that comes with time.
Yeah,
So
sure.
last time we spoke, I was in Topeka, Kansas, and we were on a video call. And I believe you mentioned that you were interested in specializing in a couple different fields, two of which being internal medicine and emergency medicine, right?
Yeah, those are two of them. Yeah.
So could you elaborate a little bit, like what you're kind of interested in specializing in at this point? I mean,
Mhm. Yeah, like I said in that conversation, I'm trying to be open-minded right now. Um, Probably, yeah, there's about three that I'm most interested in. Anesthesia
hmm,
is right up there as one of the top choices. That's definitely a field going into med school. Like I was aware of it, obviously, but I hadn't had that much exposure to it. Um, so during med school, during this past year and a half, I've been able to shadow a few different docs in the area, and that's been something that I feel like has um, drawn me more towards the field as something that um, I could see myself doing. It's a really unique specialty. It's a cool combination of the hands-on skills, but then also um, more like conceptual medicine too, and you really maintain that level of just overall medicine throughout your career. It's not like you're just specializing in, like one system or one like subspecialty. It's you're able to maintain kind of that whole body mindset. Um, and yeah, you're able to use your hands a little bit too. Um, and like I've always been interested in like the science part of medicine. And I think it's cool how, you build up a really good foundational knowledge of pharmacology and physiology. And like you need to really, really be competent in both of those because you're working with both those elements of medicine in real time in the operating room. Um, in whatever case that you're helping the surgeon with. And so yeah, I think it's a really exciting field and I'm interested in definitely pursuing it further. It's definitely competitive. Um, but but yeah, we'll see with that. And then a few other specialties, yeah, like IM or EM are also ones. I going into med school, I think I thought I was gonna do emergency medicine, having worked in the ER prior to med school. And that, that's still on the list for me, definitely. Um, Personally, like we were just talking about burnout, I know that level of burnout is really high for the emergency medicine physicians, especially as they age, and a lot of them will kind of pivot to different roles whether it's like more educational or more administrative. And um, so that's just something that like I want to be aware of with whatever specialty I'm thinking about. Um, and then internal medicine is another specialty that's interesting because it's kind of a nice one because if you don't know exactly what you want to do, like that's a great one to go into, especially if you do know that like you're interested in more like patients with acute presentations or being more in the hospital environment. You can become a hospitalist, you can go into critical care, you can do cardiology, you can do GI. There's a lot of kind of different jumping off points that you can go from IM. And I think just at this point I do know that um or I have a feeling that I want to be in the hospital environment in some way or shape or form. Um, but probably just a big variable that I'm weighing right now is the level and like length of patient interaction that I want to have. Because like we were saying, like I love interacting and talking with patients, but it's just, do I want to have a longitudinal relationship with them that lasts over years and you kind of see, little bits of progress with each interaction or um, go to a field like anesthesiology and do I want to have a, really short, compact, but very important, like 15-minute interaction with them while they're, awake and we're talking. Um, and so, yeah, like those are just some things that I'm thinking about. And um, I feel like when I'm doing like the boots in the ground work, my third year for the rotations, that'll be a good time to get a sense of, really what I love and what I don't love quite as much. And then yeah, we'll go from there.
Definitely. Now, yeah, that sounds exactly right. I mean, you get to those clinical years, and that's kind of when people start to hone in on their decisions. But it's helpful, I've heard, to kind of go in knowing what you may be interested in and just setting the standard high from the get-go. That way
Mhm.
you have a little more flexibility with your choice. Do you have any advice for somebody that's entering their first year and maybe some tips on what they should be thinking about, what they shouldn't be thinking about, kind of some keys to success, if you will?
Yeah, as far as like considering different specialties or like how to do well in classes or
Classes, networking, things of that nature.
hmm. Yeah, yeah, I feel like yeah, there's a number of things. I feel like having a good organization system is important. Having a good support system is very important as well. Um, um, having a general sense of parts of medicine or aspects of medicine that do interest you to kind of help you, in your first few years, maybe navigate towards areas that you might want to focus on. But, it's okay knowing um, that you don't have to be 100% for sure what you want to do um, with your career later on. Um, yeah, I feel like, a lot of it is just a little bit of like a mindset, going in knowing that, like I said, knowing that you're gonna have to work hard, knowing that you're gonna fail, probably, you're gonna mess up, but like that's okay, and that's supposed to happen. And it's okay to ask for help. Um, and a lot of that goes back to like having a good support system around you, whether it's friends, family, loved ones. Um, and you know, being willing to get involved, and challenging yourself with the different opportunities that your school offers, whether it's like clubs or research or like special interest groups or volunteering. Um, yeah, I know like we were talking about how sometimes it can be like counterproductive to just be focusing on one thing. At least that was my personal experience in undergrad, just focusing on classes. um, Maybe wasn't the greatest for me. And so like if you're able to diversify yourself, in some way, by taking the classes and doing a little bit of other things that can maybe help yourself out, overall. Um, and yeah, and just knowing that it's going to be hard, but it's temporary.
Yep. And you're
And I'm
involved in
more
the
just
street
saying,
medicine program, right? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I I was just saying I'm also just saying this to because I'm in the middle of it too. So just to remind myself of these things too.
Oh yeah, yeah. So you're involved in the street medicine program, though.
Mhm.
Could you tell us a little bit about that? That sounds really cool. I mean, you're working with what kind of people? What are you kind of doing?
Yeah, yeah. It's a healthcare volunteering club organization that we have at MSU here. And it's run, well, here at MSU we have three different campuses. We have our East Lansing campus and we have one in Detroit, and we have a campus in Macomb. And Spartan Street Medicine actually runs out of all three campuses. I think there's actually a clinic out of Detroit, and then we run our full street medicine org here in East Lansing. There's one in Macomb as well. And yeah, what we do, we provide healthcare for the homeless population in whatever area we're in. So here we provide it for the folks in Lansing, and we have a few different opportunities. Like, one day we have um, like a telehealth clinic. Another day we go to an overnight shelter for a few hours in the evening. There's a women's shelter that members of our organization will attend one day, and then there's on Saturdays we'll have street rounds where we'll meet up, and then sometimes we'll go to various places in the area where we're told different folks are in need of some type of service that we can provide for them. So it's it it's really beneficial in my opinion for a number of different things. It's great for practicing your hands-on skills that you're learning and kind of reminding yourself why you're doing this in the first place. And like I said, like I loved like the clinical aspect of medicine, so it's fun just to be able to get back with patients and do the hands-on work. And we work with great volunteer physicians. All of them are just great people and really good educators. Um, and you're working with a um, very like vulnerable population as well. And I think that's something that's I have a lot of gratitude to be able to do. There's a lot of trust that we need to earn um, as members of the medical establishment. As medical students, we are part of the medical establishment now, and there is a lot of mistrust amongst particularly the homeless population. So I definitely think uh, it's really worthwhile that we get to be able to do this and do a little bit of a small part to hopefully bridge that trust and also provide some healthcare. And yeah, and it's really cool too because we can build more like longitudinal relationships with the folks that we see, because we'll see a lot of times like the same people over different outings, throughout the weeks and months and sometimes the years. And so that's something that can definitely be worthwhile too.
Absolutely. Yeah, very meaningful experience. It sounds like just a good way to get involved and put your skills to some good use.
Yeah, 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 definitely.
Yeah, you're a comprehensive guy, man. You've got it. You seem to have it figured out pretty well. So far, we've
Oh
kind
man, I don't know about that.
of, it seems
Trying.
like it. You seem to be doing a great job.
Appreciate it.
I mean, we've talked about your experiences as an athlete and how it's correlated to your success in med school, surrounding yourself with the right group of people, kind of some of the things you're interested in specializing in. We went into some good detail about why you seem to have thought it through pretty thoroughly. Some tips to success in the first year, and now this street medicine program. I mean, it's awesome. It's a good experience. It's a good life, so it seems.
Yeah.
Now, as we wrap up here, do you have any last tips or pieces of advice that you think would be valuable to share with our listeners?
Um, don't compare yourself to other people. Stay true to you, stay true to why like you're doing this, why you're really doing anything, always kind of go back to your core values. Um, but I just feel like in today's world, especially, in our population, it's so easy to compare yourself to other people. Um, you know, and then in medical school, you can be surrounded by, everyone is just so talented. Everyone is so smart and doing such incredible things, that it can become overwhelming sometimes to, think you have to be doing what everyone else is doing to get to that level. But like, you gotta, find what works for you and find what challenges you and what elevates you to become, what you hope to become. And that'll take time, and it's not always linear, definitely, but just trusting that it will work out.
Great advice. Stay
Mhm.
true to yourself. Find your inner purpose that will sustain you throughout the rigors of med school and just stay true to your values.
For sure.
All right, Luke, it's been great chatting with you today, my friend.
You too, Curtis.
All right, take care.